area in Hello World View Controller H in the Assistant Editor. In the popover that appears when you release the control drag, configure the label's connection. Make sure that the connection pop-up menu contains outlet. In the name field, enter label. Make sure that the type field contains UI label. Make sure that the storage pop-up menu contains weak. In the popover, click Connect. At this point in the tutorial, you've created a total of 3 connections to your view controller. An action connection for the button, an outlet connection for the text field, an outlet connection for the label. You can verify these connections in the Connections Inspector. To open the Connections Inspector for the view controller, click the Standard Editor button to close the Assistant Editor and switch to the Standard Editor view. The Standard Editor button is the leftmost editor button, and it looks like this. Click the Utilities View button to open the Utilities area. Select Hello World View Controller in the Outline view. Show the Connections Inspector in the Utilities area. The Connections Inspector button is the rightmost button in the Inspector selector bar, and it looks like this. In the Connections Inspector, Xcode displays the connections for the selected object, in this case, the view controller. In your workspace window, you should see something like this. Notice that there's a connection between the view controller and its view, in addition to the 3 connections you created. Xcode provides this default connection between the view controller and its view. You do not have to access it in any way. You have one more connection to make in your app. You need to connect the text field to an object that you specify as its delegate. In this tutorial, you use the view controller for the text field's delegate. You need to specify a delegate object for the text field, because the text field sends a message to its delegate when the user taps the Done button in the keyboard. Recall that a delegate is an object that acts on the behalf of another object. In a later step, you'll use the method associated with this message to dismiss the keyboard. Make sure that the storyboard file is open on the canvas. If it's not, select main storyboard in the Project Navigator. To set the text field's delegate, in the view, drag from the text field to the yellow sphere in the scene dock. The yellow sphere represents the view controller object. When you release the control drag, you should see something like this. Select Delegate in the Outlet section of the translucent panel that appears. Click Run to test your app. You should find that the Hello button highlights when you click it. You should also find that if you click in the text field, the keyboard appears and you can enter text. However, there's still no way to dismiss the keyboard. To do that, you have to implement the relevant delegate method. You'll do that in the next chapter. For now, quit Simulator. There are several parts to implementing the view controller. You need to add a property for the user's name, implement the change greeting method, and ensure that the keyboard is dismissed when the user taps Done. You need to add a property declaration for the string that holds the user's name, so that your code always has a reference to it. You add this declaration to the view controller's header file, that is, Hello World View Controller H. A property declaration is a directive that tells the compiler how to generate the accessor methods for a variable, such as the variable used to hold a user's name. You'll learn about accessor methods after you add the property declaration. At this point in the tutorial, you don't need to make any further changes to the storyboard file. To give yourself more room in which to add the code described in the following steps, hide the Utilities area by clicking the Utilities View button again, or by choosing View Utilities Hide Utility. In the Project Navigator, select Hello World View Controller H. Before the add-in statement, add a net property statement for the string. The property declaration should look like this. You can type it into the editor pane. If you decide to type the code, notice that Xcode suggests completions to what you're typing. For example, as you begin to type at Pro, Xcode guesses that you want to enter at property, so it displays this symbol in an inline suggestion panel that looks similar to this. If the suggestion is appropriate, as it is in the example shown above, press Return to accept it. As you continue to type, Xcode might offer a list of suggestions from which you can choose. For example, Xcode might display the following list of completions as you type in SST. When Xcode displays a completion list, press Return to accept the highlighted suggestion. If the highlighted suggestion isn't correct, as is the case in the list shown above, use the arrow keys to select the appropriate item in the list. To complete the implementation of the username property, you also need to tell the compiler to synthesize the accessor methods. An accessor method is a method that gets or sets the value of an object's property. Sometimes, accessor methods are also called getters and setters. Xcode warns you about this requirement by displaying a yellow warning icon in the activity viewer. In this case, you already know what Xcode is warning you about, so you don't need to see more information about the warnings. If you do need to see more information about warnings, you can click the warning icon in the activity viewer to see the details in the issue navigator. You won't use the issue navigator again in this tutorial, so return to the project navigator by clicking the leftmost button in the navigator selector bar. In this tutorial, you write the code that tells the compiler to synthesize the accessor methods in the View Controller's implementation file, that is, Hello World View Controller M. To synthesize the accessor methods for the username property, in the project navigator, select Hello World View Controller M. After the Add Implementation Hello World View Controller line, add the following line of code. The addition of this code fulfills the accessor method requirement that Xcode warned you about, so the warning icon should disappear from the activity viewer. When the compiler encounters the add synthesize directive, it automatically generates the following two accessor methods for you. By adding the underscore to username in your add synthesize code line, you tell the compiler to use underscore username as the name of the instance variable for the username property. Because you didn't declare an instance variable called underscore username in your class, this code line asks the compiler to synthesize that as well. The compiler adds the accessor methods that it generates to the compiled code. It does not add them to your source code. To implement the change greeting method, if necessary, select Hello World View Controller M in the project navigator. You might have to scroll to the end of the file to see the change greeting stub implementation that Xcode added for you. Complete the stub implementation of the change greeting method by adding the following code. There are several interesting things to note in the change greeting method. To configure Hello World View Controller as the text field's delegate, if necessary, select Hello World View Controller M in the project navigator. Implement the text field should return method. The method should tell the text field to resign first responder status. The implementation should look something like this. In this app, it's not really necessary to include the text field == self.textFieldTest because there's only one text field. This is a good pattern to use, though, because there may be occasions when your object is the delegate of more than one object of the same type, and you might need to differentiate between them. Select Hello World View Controller H in the project navigator. To the end of the Add Interface line, add UI text field delegate. Your interface declaration should look like this. This declaration specifies that your Hello World View Controller class adopts the UI text field delegate protocol. Build and run the app. This time, everything should behave as you expect. In Simulator, click Done to dismiss the keyboard after you have entered your name, and then click the Hello button to display Hello, your name, in the label. Objective-C is an elegant object-oriented language that powers all iOS apps. Objective-C is a superset of C, which means you can write both C and Objective-C code in your projects. Although you can use other languages for development, you can't build an iOS app without Objective